Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is the transfer report where I take a bit more of a detailed look at exactly who Manchester United are targeting this summer. Now, massive news coming out last night that Sergio Ramos, I'm going to say arguably the best defender of all time, has become available. It looked as though he might be trying to get a new contract at Real Madrid. Some of the details surrounding that are still a little bit, I'm going to say, amateurish, I think. And we'll get into those details in a little moment. But he's become available. Manchester United are in the market for a centre-back. Like I said, he's one of the best of all time. There have been links between Manchester United and Sergio Ramos, as well as Rafael Varane. We're going to be looking at all of that. We're going to be looking at exactly why Sergio Ramos would be good for Manchester United, how he would fit in at United, what he would bring that we don't currently have. Get your comments in whether you think United should be going after Sergio Ramos, and then we'll decide again at the end, after we've looked at exactly what he does, whether we should sign him. Now, obviously, we all know Sergio Ramos to a certain extent. I'm sure, it's not like when we signed Donny van der Beek and everyone pretended to have seen him. We've all actually seen Sergio Ramos play. He's one of the most prominent figures in world football for the last 15 years. But when you look down into the stats, it really highlights what he does differently to the options we already have. So let's get into that. I'm going to be comparing him to Victor Lindelof because Harry Maguire's playing. You may not like him. You may not think he's the best centre-back in the world. I think pretty much at this point everyone agrees he's our best centre-back, and also he's our club record signing just behind Paul Pogba. Is the record for the most expensive centre-back of all time. He is playing for Manchester United. So let's compare him to Victor Lindelof, the man that he's probably going to be replacing if Manchester United do decide to target Sergio Ramos. And like I said, there have been some reports saying that we will. So Sergio Ramos, this is in the last year. In terms of non-penalty goals, now this is something that he weirdly excels in. Everyone knows that Sergio Ramos is great at scoring goals. Non-penalty goals, 0.1 per 90 minutes, which for a centre-back puts him in the 92nd percentile. Basically, he's better than 92% of defenders in that time. Non-penalty expected goals puts him in the 99th percentile. So basically, he's missing a few, in all honesty, but he's obviously getting up there. Compare that to Victor Lindelof's non-penalty goals, 0, which puts him, weirdly enough, only in the 15th percentile. So I guess a lot of centre-backs don't score any goals. Again, his expected goals is 0.02. So Victor Lindelof is not a goal threat. We kind of know that from watching him. But again, total shots per 90. Victor Lindelof is 0.16. So basically, he has a shot every 9 games, which puts him at the 4th percentile. One of the least shooting centre-backs in Europe. Only 4% of centre-backs shoot less than him. Compare that to Sergio Ramos. He takes 0.93 shots a game, basically a shot a game, putting him in the 98th percentile. He's one of the most active forward attacking centre-backs in Europe. Even when it comes to assists, it's a very low number, but 0.004, that puts him in the 78th percentile, and the same for Victor Lindelof. We know that Victor Lindelof can play those passes over the top. He's done it a couple of times to Rashford, got an assist, also set him up for a penalty as well with those cutting passes over the top. That's where Victor Lindelof excels. But here's the thing, that's also where Sergio Ramos excels. His expected assists and goals per 90, Sergio Ramos is in the 99th percentile. Again, we know creating goals, scoring goals. He's about as good as it gets from centre-back. He's got over 100 goals for Real Madrid. That's insane. That's more than Benteke's got for Palace, and he's a striker. Expected goals and assists for Victor Lindelof is at 0.04, which is the 23rd percentile. Again, that's not his strong suit, obviously. Shot creating actions, again, which is passes forward, that sort of thing. Where you think Lindelof might excel, because he does do things that lead to shots, he's still only in the 23rd percentile, whereas Ramos in the 83rd percentile. So some of these things, it's basically only passing that Lindelof is good at, whereas Ramos is good at passing, he's good at shooting, he's good at scoring. That's not why you're getting a centre-back. As good as Ramos is, as much as we would like that added goal threat from set pieces, he does take penalties as well occasionally, so that skews these statistics somewhat. But as good as he is at that, that's not why you want Sergio Ramos. We need a leader. We need someone that can control the game with his voice from the back, with the ball at his feet. Now, if you look at the number of touches that Ramos takes, it puts him in the 92nd percentile. Victor Lindelof only in the 8th percentile, so he does not have the ball at his feet as often. Progressive carries, Ramos is in the 59th percentile. That's where somewhere that Lindelof does actually excel. He's in the 75th percentile, ahead of Sergio Ramos. Ramos has got a better pass completion. He makes more forward passes than Victor Lindelof. And the progressive passes received, which means the ball is going forward to him, which basically is a metric looking at where Ramos is on the pitch. He receives 0.56 progressive passes per game, which puts him in the 87th percentile. And Victor Lindelof is in the 20th. So he's basically at the back of everything, not really taking the ball forward, not making those runs in where he can receive forward passes. One thing that is slightly surprising looking through these stats here is that the aerials won per game is higher for Victor Lindelof. And he's someone that isn't known for his aerial ability. He's only in the 45th percentile, but Ramos is down there in the 31st percentile, so it's not his strong suit. Tackles, much higher for Ramos, 1.4 a game, which again doesn't sound like that much really, does it? But it puts him in the 46th percentile. Again, not that great. Victor Lindelof, 0.7 tackles per game, down there in the 3rd percentile. So again, what we're seeing here is Ramos is a huge threat going forward, one of the best in Europe going forward as a centre-back. Not just from set pieces, these are assists, chances created, shots, not just from set pieces, whereas Victor Lindelof doesn't offer anything in terms of a goal threat. And again, bringing the ball out, progressive passes, holding possession, Ramos far excels past Victor Lindelof, which is surprising because that is kind of what Lindelof is known for, isn't it? Holding the ball, bringing it out, and finding those passes over the top. So he just is a huge improvement over Victor Lindelof in most areas. People saying Sergio Ramos is like Gary Neville, but not one of our own. Interesting. But Gary Neville was a decent player, wasn't he? People saying no to Ramos. If Ramos joins United, we riot. A lot of people not keen on Sergio Ramos. Chelsea got Thiago Silva last season. He was 35. He'd been playing in a league that wasn't as competitive, wasn't as high quality as Ramos has been playing in, and he came in and was their best centre-back this season. It also, think of it from a Glazers perspective. What do they like doing? They like getting big names and they don't like spending money. This is literally the best of both worlds for them. You get the most prolific, notorious centre-back maybe ever, and you don't have to pay a transfer fee. Now, obviously, he's going to be costing £200,000-300,000 a week to keep him at United in terms of a contract, but a free transfer and you get to have the most famous centre-back in the world, that sounds like a decent shout to me. Mayo saying Ramos is washed, he's not Thiago Silva. People said that when Thiago Silva went to Chelsea. It's easy to look back and say they won the Champions League. When he signed, everyone said that was a silly signing. Or he hasn't got the legs. He didn't have the legs anyway, and he's been playing in France for 6 years or whatever it was for Thiago Silva. It's not going to work out at Chelsea. It did work out at Chelsea. If Ramos comes, he has to be captain. We'll see about that. Donaldo Trumpez, not sure about that, says anyone who doesn't rate Ramos for United is just wrong. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I still think Sergio Ramos has a lot to bring. And he's another leader in the dressing room, kind of the ultimate leader, really, isn't he, in the dressing room? I think, it's a great thing to... I would be going after him if it was up to me. Asad Butto says, if you have a player of his quality that's available for free, then you have to go for him. He's a leader at the back. He's what we need. People saying, you can't say no for free. Ramos is better than Maguire. I don't know that that's the case in terms of Ramos being better than Maguire, but surely a free transfer, what is the risk here? He's not going to be signed on a 5-year deal like Sanchez was. So yes, his contract is going to be inflated. He's going to be probably on the most money in the club, maybe behind Pogba, maybe behind De Gea. But it's for 1 or 2 years at most. I could see this being a 1 year with an optional second year. It's not as though he's coming in with 5 years on his contract and everyone's saying, why is this lad sticking about for 6 years, earning twice as much as us and he's crap? If he's bad, you get rid of him after a season. For me, this isn't that much of a risk. Someone's saying wages won't be free. Well, they won't. But again, it's 1 year. He's not going to be offered a 3-4 year contract, is he? Maybe 2 at a push. We've made mistakes in the past. We've still got Phil Jones on the books. I think he's got 4 years left on his contract. Wouldn't rather have Sergio Ramos with 2 years on his contract as it to take a chance to bring this team to the next level. He's a winner, one of the great centre-backs of all time. I know he's old. I know he's not the player he was 4 or 5 years ago. But to me, this makes a lot of sense for United. Alex says, Joe speaks sense, but I'm stubborn AF. Well, you know what? At least you're willing to admit that. That's fair enough. Right, let's move on then. Let me know in the comments whether you think United should get Ramos, and also whether you think we will, because Fabrizio Romano tweeted last night about he's not going to Sevilla. That was one of the rumours last night, saying that he's going to be going back to Sevilla. That's where he started his career. He's not going there. He's in talks with the club at the moment. We will be speaking to Fabrizio Romano later on. You bet your bottom dollar I'm going to be asking him who that club is, because if it's Man United, personally, I'd be well up for that. Let's have a look at some other comparisons then, because another man that has been linked with Manchester United, has been made available on the transfer market and was an absolute standout for Italy yesterday and so far in the Euros, is Locatelli. Now he's 23 years old. He's one of those players who sort of stands out in the stats because he holds the ball very well. You know, he's notoriously a good creator from deep. Let's have a look at some of his stats in comparison to Fred, who, again, he may well replace at Manchester United. He's been linked with a move away. Apparently, he's available for around 25 to 40 million, somewhere in that range, which, for a player that looks to be as good as he is, that is, something that I think Manchester United could well be after. And again, we'll be talking about him to Fabrizio Romano later on today. So Manuel Locatelli, and we're comparing him to Fred here, which, again, that is who he would replace at Manchester United. If he's going to come in and play that deep line playmaker, that deep line sort of ball holder, it's going to be replacing either Fred or McTominay. So let's compare him to Fred. So in terms of passing and passes attempted, it's surprisingly not that dissimilar in a lot of ways. The pass completion, progressive passes, passes attempted are all kind of in the similar ballpark. Slightly, Locatelli's ahead. But when it comes to progressive passes and touches, 1.57 touches per into the penalty box, 1.57 per game for Locatelli, 0.6 per game for Fred, which again puts him at the 70th percentile and the 23rd percentile respectively. That is a huge difference. It's the way that they have the ball and the way that they put the ball into the opposition box. Fred, in terms of assists, is 0.05 per game, which is an assist every 20 matches, if my math is correct there. That's just not very good. Locatelli is 0.2, which is significantly higher than that. Shots total 1.3 a game. Fred 0.92. Not even that different, but we know that Fred doesn't get many goals, and that's reflected in the non-penalty goals for Fred. Is 1, and all season, and an average of 0.01 per game, which puts him at the 14th percentile. Non-penalty goals for Manuel Locatelli, 0.05, which puts him at the 48th percentile. The main difference between these two is when it comes to dribbles completed, when it comes to progressive carries, progressive passes. Locatelli in the 98th percentile, one of the best progressive passers in European football. That's because he sits deep, he holds on to the ball, and he finds players in front of him. That's something that Fred does struggle with a little bit. 5.7 progressive passes per game. Locatelli up at 7.5. The big difference as well, if we're going to be honest and fair to Fred, when it comes to defensive actions, pressures per game, 23.9 for Fred, only 14 for Locatelli. That puts Fred in the 94th percentile. Tackles is way up there as well, with 3.1 per game. Interceptions, 1.8 a game. Blocks, 2.4 a game. And that puts him above the 90th percentile in all of those stats, Fred. He's one of the best 10% of defensive sort of pressurers in Europe, whereas Locatelli, down in the 40% for interceptions, pressures is 17%. So there is a big difference there. Fred is your more sit back, apply a hell of a lot of pressure when the opposition has the ball. Locatelli is the man you want in possession when we have the ball. My sort of conclusion from this, and a lot of people may not like this, is that they would play brilliantly together. And I know a lot of people want to get rid of Fred, and myself included. I think there are vast improvements on Fred. But these two next to each other would complement each other brilliantly. Fred doing the pressing, giving the ball to Locatelli. He can then play the ball out from the back and bring other people in front of him into play. The problem we have at the moment is when you play Fred and McTominay next to each other, they're good at getting the ball back. It's when they're on the ball that we have the problems. It's when they are forced to bring the ball out and try to make assists, make chances for their teammates. They don't do very well at that. Whereas Locatelli is sensational at that. Like I said, one of the highest pass completions in Europe, one of the highest progressive passes in Europe. He's brilliant at getting the ball deep and bringing other people into play. I think they would work brilliantly as a partnership. And again, we'll be keeping up to date on exactly United's interest on Locatelli, because like we said, we're speaking to Fabrizio Romano at 5 o'clock and we will be talking to him about Manuel Locatelli. People saying just get a proper CDM. We don't have Kante to make Varane look good. He's overrated. Ramos any day. People saying that Ramos over Varane there. Would be wonderful if we could get Sergio Ramos. That would mean we could actually concentrate on right wing and CDM without spending a ton on a defender. Honestly, Pavesh, that is exactly what I think. I know he might not be the best in the world, but people thought this when Cavani's another example. Coming from PSG, he hadn't played any football for about 5 months when we signed him, or 4 months. And he comes in, yes, he took a little bit of time to get into it, but that quality showed through eventually. He hasn't got a lot of pace, but he's still got the energy. I think he's a year younger than Ramos, so there's not a huge age disparity there. I think it would be a brilliant signing for United. And yes, there's a risk in terms of the money you're paying in his wages, but when you look at a transfer fee or this sort of seismic 30, 40, 50, 60 million kind of fee, Sergio Ramos on a free and 300 grand a week wages is nowhere near the risk that someone who, let's not forget, if you're spending 60, 70 million on a player, they're still getting 200 grand a week wages. They're still getting a hell of a lot of money. You don't get them for 60 million and then pay them 40 grand a week. I just think it seems like a sort of win-win for United. Before we go, let's have a little look at Rafael Varane as well, because there have been some updates today. And again, we'll be getting the full details on this when we speak to Fabrizio Romano later on. But this is coming from the MEN that United have made a £50 million offer for Rafael Varane, but Real Madrid are holding out for 80 million. That's according again to the MEN. United remain in dialogue with Madrid and will seek a compromise over the fee, but are reluctant to meet the valuation of 80 million. This follows reports last night after the Ramos announcement that Varane would be staying in Madrid. Now, that could just be sort of propaganda and the story coming out of Madrid, them quickly pushing a line saying, Varane's going to stay. We can't afford to lose both from Varane's going to stay. That could be the case. I wouldn't be surprised to see Varane sign a new contract at Madrid, but the stories linking him to United, haven't slowed down at all, and that's the first story I've seen saying that United have made an actual official bid for Rafael Varane. So apparently £50 million bid has been rejected for Varane. The source on that is the MEN, so maybe not the most reliable, but again, that's the first news I've seen saying that Varane has actually been approached formally by Manchester United. In 2 years, when Ramos's age hits him, United will be back in the same position we are now with centre-backs, so it's a bad, short-sighted investment. I agree that we're not going to have him forever, but look at Chelsea last season. They got Thiago Silva. They've won the Champions League. It doesn't matter whether he leaves next season now. It doesn't matter whether he goes in 18 months or he doesn't play again or he gets an injury. His commanding nature at the back, his winning mentality that not a lot of that Chelsea team have, certainly in the defence, was one of the things that got them over the line in that tournament. And it doesn't take that much for United to win, maybe not a Champions League, but if we won an FA Cup and a League Cup, or we had a really good title run next season, you could give Ramos credit for that, and it wouldn't necessarily have to win us, the Premier League and the Champions League for 8 of the next 10 years. At some point, you need leaders and you need people with experience and a mentality that winning is no problem. At the moment, I think United struggle from not having enough people who have won a lot in that team. All of the key players, you look through that team, Bruno hasn't really won much, Maguire hasn't really won much, Rashford has won a couple of things here and there, but he wasn't the main man in a team that won things. The only real winners in our team currently, serial winners, are Paul Pogba and Edinson Cavani. And they weren't enough to take us over the line against Villarreal a couple of weeks ago. So I think getting someone like Sergio Ramos in there, just for his mentality as much as anything, could be the difference between, like last season, when we 3-0 down to RB Leipzig. Do you think that happens with Ramos in the team? I'm not so sure. I don't think we fall apart against Istanbul away either. I think there are certain things that players of that quality just stop from happening. And I know you can't just say Ramos would have won us this game, would have won us that game. It's a bit of a silly game to play, but I just think having people through the spine of that team Ramos, Pogba, Cavani, who have won pretty much everything. Certainly Ramos has won everything. I think that would be a good thing for United on a free transfer as well. It's relatively risk-free. Right, that's going to be all from me. Again, let me know if you think Ramos fits in at United and how he fits in. He looks to be an upgrade on Lindelof. Certainly going forward is an upgrade on Victor Lindelof. Let me know whether you'd have him. Let me know your thoughts on Manuel Locatelli as well. Sort of a rising star over in Italy. We will be back tonight at 5 o'clock live with Fabrizio Romano. Get your questions in. We've tweeted about it. We've mentioned it. Get some questions in there. We'll be reading some of those. Or just join us in the live chat. Send in your chats and we will be reading some of the questions to Fabrizio Romano. Obviously, we've got a few lined up as well and we won't be able to necessarily get to everyone. He's a busy man. We can't have all day with him. 5 o'clock tonight. Make sure you check that out. Thank you very much for joining me. We'll see you in a bit.